Welcome to Revenge Threads. Today's story is about betrayal, broken promises, and the revenge that changed everything. But first, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? After 25 years of marriage, my mom finally divorced my biological father. She should have done it sooner. He was manipulative, cold, cruel in ways that never left bruises but always left scars. But still, 25 years is a long time to walk away from. And when she did, it broke her a little. Not visibly, not loudly, but in those quiet ways that only a daughter can notice. She started leaving dinner unfinished, started sleeping later than usual, stopped humming when she washed dishes. She lost pieces of herself. Pieces I had watched her carry through storms and stress and raising 3 kids with a man who never deserved her. So when she introduced us to her new boyfriend, we didn't ask questions. His name was Chris. He was younger than Mom by 5 years, 45 at the time, but he had that worn-down look of someone who had aged twice as fast. Gruffy beard, faded tattoos, and that tired grin that told you he'd lived too hard for too long. He had a past, and not a hidden one. He'd served time. A DUI charge. Simple, ugly. Nothing violent, thank God. And most people would have slammed the door right there. But my mother, she saw something in him. Something worth saving. She said he was different now. Said he understood her pain. And maybe he did. Maybe that was the problem. At first we let it go. He wasn't charming, but he wasn't rude. He liked video games like my brother. Made a few jokes. Did the dishes occasionally. We weren't friends, but we weren't enemies either. And more than anything, he made her smile. Not often. Not brightly. But it was something. And when someone has been unloved for most of her life, even something feels like a miracle. So we didn't fight it. We moved in with them. Me, my brother, and my older sister. A makeshift family stitched together by second chances and tired hope. The next few months were quiet. Too quiet. Chris got a job managing a local Dairy Queen. My mom picked up longer shifts as a corrections officer. We all fell into a routine. It wasn't perfect, but it was stable. And sometimes stability is enough. Until it isn't. It started in 2017. Chris had regular check-ins at the courthouse, part of his probation from the DUI. Nothing unusual. He went. He signed papers. He came back. Except one day he didn't. Hours passed. No calls. No texts. My mom paced the living room like a caged animal, her face twisted in worry she wouldn't voice out loud. And then the phone rang. A number from Texas. The voice on the other end was shaky. It was Chris. Calling from a holding facility. He told my mom that he'd been detained by the FBI the moment he walked into the courthouse. Something about his family, gang ties, drug deals, and him, caught in the middle. Apparently, he had been in a car during a drug handoff. Enough to get implicated, not enough to get completely thrown away. So he cut a deal. He'd testify against his family. In exchange, he'd get time served and freedom before the trial. My mom listened. Said nothing. Then hung up. That night she didn't cry. She just sat at the kitchen table staring at nothing, hands wrapped tightly around a cup of tea she never drank. I wanted to scream, to ask her what she was thinking. But I didn't. Because I knew that look on her face. The same one she wore for decades with my father. The look of someone choosing hope even when it has betrayed her over and over. Over the next year, the phone calls came regularly. Chris from Texas, promising things, telling her he missed her, that when he got out they'd get married. Mom started planning again. She talked about flowers, rings, DQ cake at the reception because it would be cute and full circle. It was heartbreaking, honestly. But we let her dream. Because after everything she had been through, didn't she deserve at least that? When Chris was finally released, he returned to town like a ghost resurrected. He walked back into our lives with nothing but a duffel bag and a crooked smile. and Mom took him back. No questions asked. He returned to his old job. His boss welcomed him. Mom cooked dinner again. Started humming again. It was like the storm had passed. But the thing about storms is, sometimes they circle back. When Chris came back from Texas, things were I couldn't explain it at first. He laughed louder than before, but it didn't feel real. He clapped my brother on the back like they were best friends, but his eyes never matched the smile. He sat closer to my mother, but he never truly looked at her. It was all show, all surface. And we wanted to believe it so badly. Especially Mom. She cooked like she was feeding royalty, kept the house spotless, even started putting little sticky notes on his lunch containers that said things like, "You're my piece." It was almost sweet. Almost. But then we noticed the smell. It started in the evenings. Faint at first, just a whisper of stale beer on his breath. We chalked it up to stress, or maybe nerves about the upcoming trial. But soon it wasn't just at night. It was breakfast. It was mid-afternoon. It was Sunday morning at 9 a.m. He kept a 24-pack of beer under the sink. And by the end of each day, half of it would be gone. The man wasn't sipping. He was drowning. Mom tried to reason with him at first. Gently. She sat across from him at dinner one night and asked, "You doing okay, babe?" He grunted. Didn't look up. Just shoved mashed potatoes around his plate like a moody teenager. She tried again. "You seem tense lately. Are you drinking more?" That's when he snapped. "I work 10 hours a day for a bunch of ungrateful brats. I come home to a house full of freeloading kids that aren't even mine, and I've got you breathing down my neck like a parole officer." We all froze. Even my brother, who rarely flinched at anything, looked stunned. Mom just blinked. Quiet. Processing. Then she said, "That's not fair, Chris." And he stood up, knocking over his chair, and walked out. The screen door slammed behind him. He was gone for 3 hours. Came back with more beer. No apologies. That became the routine. Drinking. Exploding. Disappearing. Returning. Repeat. And each time Mom would try something softer. Favorite meal. A gentle word. A soft, "Can we talk?" But the Chris who came back from Texas wasn't the same man she fell for. He was sharper. Meaner. He didn't need fists to hurt. Just the right sentence, the right tone. And he knew exactly where to aim. "You're lucky anyone wants you. Your kids will leave you just like your ex did. You think you're special because you work with criminals? You are one." I heard every word. Even when I wasn't in the room. Because words like that seep through walls. We tried talking to her. My sister went first. Told her this wasn't normal. That she didn't have to live like this. That love wasn't supposed to feel like fear. But Mom just smiled. That fake, tired smile that never touched her eyes. "He's just stressed. It's temporary. He'll get better." But he didn't. He got worse. And every time he left the house with that six-pack in hand, I wondered, when is the last time he looked in the mirror and recognized himself? And when is the last time she did? One night I walked into the kitchen and found him staring at the wall. Just standing there. Not blinking. Not moving. The beer can in his hand was crushed like he'd forgotten he was holding it. I didn't say anything. I backed out of the room slowly. Because I realized something chilling. He wasn't just broken. He was dangerous. That night I locked my bedroom door for the first time. Not because I thought he'd hurt me. But because I suddenly understood. We weren't a family anymore. We were just a time bomb, ticking away. It happened on a Thursday night. One of those quiet evenings where everything feels suspended, like the house itself is holding its breath. Chris came home drunk again. Worse than usual. He staggered in, dropped his keys on the floor, and slurred something about being watched at work. We didn't ask. We didn't answer. We just sat there, frozen at the table. Mom stood up slowly. She didn't shout. Didn't cry. Didn't throw anything. She simply asked one question. Have you been drinking again? Chris paused, looked at her, and said, so what if I have? Then he burped, loud and ugly, and pushed past her into the hallway. That was it. That was the final straw. Mom looked at all three of us. Tears in her eyes, but this time they weren't soft. They were cold. Help me pack his stuff, she said. Just like that. The next morning, Chris was still passed out in the bedroom. Mom had already called a friend of his to say he was coming. We piled every piece of his into trash bags. His clothes, his Xbox, his ratty recliner, even his half-empty box of instant noodles. We put everything in the alley behind the house, right next to the dumpster. My brother added a sticky note on top that said, "Do not return." We all laughed. It was the first time we'd laughed in weeks. It didn't last. Around noon, we heard a knock at the front door. We all thought it was Chris, coming back early, making a scene. But it wasn't. It was Betty. Well, Betty was unexpected. She worked at the same Dairy Queen as Chris, was a few years younger than me. We'd gone to the same high school, though we weren't friends back then. I opened the door and saw her face, pale, nervous, serious. She asked if she could speak to my mom. Said it was urgent. We let her in. She sat on the couch, clutching her phone like it might shatter in her hands. "Please don't tell anyone I said this," she started. "Especially not Chris." And then she dropped the bomb. Chris was cheating. Not just flirting. Not just rumors. Cheating. With a woman named Darla, about 40 years old, worked in a nearby town. Apparently, they'd been seeing each other for months. Betty had caught them in the store. Multiple times. Doing things in the back room. Making out in the walk-in freezer. Even having sex during her shifts. When Betty tried to speak up, Chris threatened to fire her. But that wasn't the worst part. Not even close. The worst part. Darla was pregnant. Mom didn't move. Didn't blink. She just stared at Betty like she was trying to determine whether this was some kind of dream. Then she whispered, "Are you sure?" Betty nodded. "I wouldn't be here if I wasn't." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Mom stood up, walked into the bedroom, and opened the closet. She didn't say anything. She just grabbed a trash bag, came back out, and told us, "Get the rest of his shit out." We did. His deodorant, razor, socks. All of it. Dumped it with the rest. By now there were 7 bags in the alley. Chris wasn't coming back. Not ever. Mom called him once. Just once. Put him on speaker. When he picked up, his voice was all groggy confidence. "What do you want?" She asked if it was true. Asked about Darla. About the cheating. About the baby. And he said flat out, no shame. "Yeah, so what? She can give me something you never could." That's when I heard it. The crack in Mom's voice. But she didn't let it break her. She replied, voice cold as steel, "Then don't ever come near this house again." And she hung up. He never tried to argue. Never tried to deny. Because he knew. He'd been caught. And in his twisted mind, he didn't care. He was proud. We called the police later that day. Let them know he'd be coming to collect his things from the alley, and we wanted an officer present. We didn't trust him. Didn't know what he might say or do. When he showed up, we stayed inside. Watched through the window as he dug through the bags like a raccoon in the garbage. He didn't look up once. Didn't knock. Didn't ask. He just gathered what he could, tossed it into the trunk of someone else's car, and left. That was the last time I saw him. But it wasn't the end. Oh no. That was just the setup. Because while Mom wanted to move on, we weren't done. And if he thought that cheating and lying and humiliating her would go unpunished, he was about to find out just how far we'd go to destroy what little life he had left. Mom wanted to let it go. To move on. To forget his name. To scrub his ghost out of the curtains and closets. She said revenge wasn't her thing. Said she didn't want to waste more time on a man who never deserved a minute of it. And we respected that. But we weren't her. We were her children. And someone had hurt our mother. So we decided, quietly without her knowing, to return the favor. It started with a call. Not to Chris. To his boss. Well, former boss. The one who had hired him back when he got out of prison. The one who managed the franchise of Dairy Queens in our area. A guy named Raymond, older, serious, and close to my mom from years ago. My brother made the call. Told him everything. How Chris was cheating with Darla. How he was bringing her into the store after hours. How there had been sexual acts in the break room in uniform on the premises. How he'd threatened Betty with termination if she ever spoke up. We didn't have to exaggerate a thing. The truth was awful enough. Raymond was silent for a while. Then he sighed and said, "Thank you for telling me." A week later, Chris was out of a job. Not just from that branch. From all of them. Banned from working in any store Raymond owned, which in our town was most of them. Betty got promoted. She became store manager the following month. And let me tell you, she ran that place like a machine. I visited once just to grab a blizzard. She gave me a wink at the window and whispered, "Tell your mom thank you. And congrats." Chris, of course, tried to spin it. Told everyone he was laid off. Said the company was downsizing. But we knew better. And more importantly, he knew we knew. That was step 1. Step 2? Find out where he went next. Didn't take long. Turns out he moved in with Darla, in a small town an hour away. He took a job at another Dairy Queen owned by someone else. Different franchise. No ties to Raymond. So, we made another call. This time my sister did the honors. She laid it all out. The same story. The same warnings. Except this time the manager wasn't as receptive. He said he'd keep an eye on things. But unless Chris did something at his store, he couldn't act. Frustrating, but understandable. We knew we had to wait. So we did. But in the meantime, something else started happening. Chris started showing up. Driving through our neighborhood. Fully. Circling the block. At first we thought we were imagining it. Then we saw the car parked across the street one night. My brother walked outside and the car pulled away. He didn't live here anymore. Didn't work here. Had no reason to be anywhere near our house. But there he was. Again and again. Always alone. Always watching. We called the police. Gave them the make, model, plates, everything. And most importantly, we told them Chris was driving. Which he legally wasn't allowed to do. You see, despite everything, his DUI, his probation, his court history, Chris never had his license reinstated. He was not cleared to drive. Not even Darla's car. No. We had proof he was doing exactly that. The officer who took our call was a family acquaintance. He promised to keep an eye out. Said if they saw the car again, they'd stop it. They didn't have to wait long. 2 weeks later, Chris got pulled over. He was drunk. Driving Darla's car. No license. Slurred speech. Open container in the passenger seat. He was arrested on the spot. But that wasn't all. Because the officer who arrested him also got a warrant. And guess what they found in the house he shared with Darla? Guns. Multiple firearms. Chris, a convicted felon, wasn't allowed to be within 10 feet of a gun. Let alone own them. So just like that, Chris went from unemployed to incarcerated. Again. Back behind bars. And he hadn't even made it to trial in Texas yet. He was scheduled to go back. Now he'd be returning in chains. When my mom found out, she didn't smile. Didn't celebrate. She just said, "I told him not to come back." And that was that. But the best part? He missed the birth of his child. Darla had the baby while Chris was locked up. And sometime during his sentence she must have realized just how poisonous he really was, because she left him too. Filed for child support. Cut off contact. Moved on. And suddenly Chris had nothing. No job. No home. No woman. No child. No control. He started sending letters. Pages and pages of pathetic apologies to my mom. Begging. Blaming. Crying. One letter would say, "I've changed, I swear. I miss you." The next, "This is all your fault. You turned my kid against me." Like flipping a switch. Over and over. My mom didn't respond. She just opened the letters, read the first line, and dropped them into a metal bin. Then set them on fire. We didn't save the ashes. We saved ourselves. After Chris was hauled off to jail, again, it was like someone flipped a switch in our house. Everything felt lighter. Quieter. Mom started sleeping through the night. The TV wasn't always playing some mindless cop drama. No more arguments over dinner. No more walking on eggshells around a beer-soaked man who thought he was smarter than the rest of us. We were free. At least for the moment. Mom didn't speak much about it. She didn't dance in the kitchen or throw a party. But you could tell. She held her coffee mug differently. She stood straighter when she talked to strangers. She started humming again, this time not to remember something but because she felt something again. Peace. And for us, it wasn't just peace. It was fuel. My sister moved out a few months later. Then my brother got an internship out of state. Me. I stayed. By choice. Someone had to help Mom with the house. And maybe, just maybe, I still had a little fire left in me. Something unfinished. Then one day Mom said it. "Let's move." Just like that. She'd been saving. She had some inheritance money tucked away from a distant relative. And now that Chris was out of our lives, and out of our town, she wanted a fresh start. Somewhere new. Somewhere he couldn't find us. Somewhere she could breathe and not hear his voice in the walls. I helped her pack. We found a modest house 2 states away. Nothing fancy, but it had a porch, a yard, and no memories. No shadows. No ghosts. We left everything we didn't love. Old furniture, sold. Curtains from the old bedroom, donated. That chair he always sat in like a throne, burned. Literally. We dragged it to a fire pit and watched it burn. It was stupid, maybe even childish. But it felt good. Mom watched in silence. Then she turned to me and said, "I don't know why I let him stay so long." I didn't answer. Because she didn't need an answer. She needed permission to never ask again. Our new life was quiet. Beautifully boring. I found a job at a bookstore. Mom started volunteering at a local clinic. We painted the kitchen walls blue, her favorite color. She even started dating again. Carefully. Slowly. Nothing serious. Just someone to talk to. Someone who didn't raise his voice when he was tired. Someone who didn't smell like failure. We didn't hear from Chris for almost 2 years. Not a single word. No letters. No calls. No sightings. It was perfect. Until it wasn't. One night I came home late from work. The porch light was off. Which was odd. Mom always left it on for me. I stepped inside. Found her sitting on the couch. Still as stone. Holding a letter. She handed it to me without a word. I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was his. "I heard you moved. Took me a while, but I found you. I'm sorry for everything. I still love you. I miss our family. I miss you." Then the kicker. "I think we should try again. I've changed." No apology for the cheating. No mention of Darla. No update on his child. Just this delusional fantasy of reconciliation. Like none of it happened. Like he didn't tear her apart from the inside out. Mom didn't cry. She just looked at me and said, "Do we call the police?" I said yes. We filed a report. Sent a copy of the letter to the department. Told them everything, again. His threats. His past. His obsession. And we made one more decision. We were done hiding. We changed our numbers. Made sure no trace of our address was online. Even set up alerts on social media in case his name popped up nearby. And just in case, we installed cameras all around the house. We weren't scared. We were ready. He tried again a month later. Another letter. More rambling. More begging. We didn't even open it. Just handed it straight to the police. They opened a stalking file. Now if he showed up, he wouldn't get a warning. He'd get cuffs. Darla, we later heard, had filed for child support. He tried to contest it, claimed he couldn't pay. But the courts didn't care. He owed. And as the years passed, those debts stacked up. He moved to Kansas. Tried starting over. But you can't build a future on a graveyard of lies. He struggled. Failed. Started over, again. Failed, again. Every now and then I'd hear a whisper. Someone would text me, "Hey, isn't this your mom's ex? He applied for a job here." I'd forward the stalking report. The arrest records. The Texas charges. Let the truth do the work. Because he may have tried to break her. But we made sure he stayed broken. Time is funny. It moves slowly when you're hurting. Drags itself across your skin like a dull knife. But when you're healing, it slips past like water, quiet, clean, and fast. It had been over 3 years since we'd heard anything from Chris. Mom had a new boyfriend, James. He was soft-spoken, kind, an old-fashioned gentleman with a quiet laugh and eyes that looked at my mom like she was the only person in the room. He adored her. She didn't say it out loud, but I could see it in the way she touched his shoulder lightly when she passed by, or how she looked up from her book every time he entered the room. For the first time in decades, she was safe. As for me, I finally moved out. Bought a little place not far from them. Started teaching part-time. Adopted a mutt named Penny who thinks she owns the neighborhood. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And that made it sacred. Until one Wednesday afternoon I saw him. I was at the grocery store. The usual milk, eggs, bread, ibuprofen because I was getting older and my back decided to remind me. And then in the frozen aisle I heard it. A voice. Too familiar. Too cocky. Too him. Nah man, they screwed me over. He was crazy. Lied about everything. Her kids were worse. I turned my head before I could stop myself. And there he was. Chris. Same hunched shoulders. Same smirk. Same voice, only this time laced with bitterness instead of bravado. He was talking to someone, a man in his 30s, maybe a coworker. Laughing. Complaining. Then he saw me. His eyes locked with mine. That second, that breath between seeing and reacting, stretched long enough to hold every terrible memory. The yelling. The beer. The slammed doors. The letters. The cheating. The pregnancy. All of it. Right there in his eyes. Mine. They held no fear. No pity. No softness. Just cold, measured recognition. Like watching a shadow crawl back into the light. His face changed. The smirk faded. His jaw twitched. His grip on the frozen pizza in his hand tightened. He turned away quickly, muttering something under his breath. I didn't follow. Didn't speak. Didn't flinch. I walked past him like he was nothing. Because he was. Outside, I sat in my car for a minute. Hands on the steering wheel. Heart thumping. Not from fear. Not from trauma. From adrenaline. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't the one hiding. He was. I got home and the first thing I did was text Mom. Saw Chris today. He looked like hell. Didn't say a word. She replied 15 seconds later. Should have told him hi. Then reminded him of all he lost. Classic Mom. That night something shifted in me. I used to dream about that moment. What I'd say if I saw him again. How I'd destroy him with words. Make him cry. Make him regret. But no. Silence was the sharpest blade. He knew who I was. He saw what I'd become. And I didn't need to scream. I just needed to stand. Still, I wasn't taking chances. I called the police station the next morning. Spoke to the same officer from before. Updated our file. Told them he was back in town. They flagged it, reopened the stalking record, and let me know they'd increase patrols near my mom's place, just in case. And I updated the cameras. Bought new ones. Installed them myself. Every corner. Every window. Every door. Because the next time Chris tried to crawl back, I wasn't just going to shut the door. I was going to lock it behind him and light the damn porch on fire. He never showed up. Never sent a letter. Never drove past the house. Kate, he knew. This wasn't the same girl from before. And this wasn't the same family. He destroyed his own life. We just made sure the door stayed closed behind him. No. We live in the quiet. Not the kind that follows disaster. The kind that follows victory. There's this unspoken truth about family. They might not always support your choices, but they'll tolerate them. They'll look the other way even when they know you're in the wrong. That's what Chris always relied on. That blind loyalty. That belief that he's family after all. But eventually even blood has a limit. I don't know much about Chris's family. We never met most of them, only heard bits and pieces from Chris himself. Some uncles in Texas. A sister who wouldn't speak to him anymore. A cousin who he used to crash with when he needed a break. But they were all distant shadows. Until the trial. See, part of Chris's freedom deal, the one he took to avoid serving a long sentence in Texas, was testifying. Against his own family. Against people who, allegedly, were deep into drug trafficking and weapons charges. And Chris? He flipped. Gave names. Gave dates. Gave enough to walk free for a while. Until he messed up again, of course. We didn't know the full details until later. But when he went back to prison after violating probation, his family cut ties. No more phone calls. No more packages. No one on his visitor list. Darla was gone. His child, just a name on court documents now. And his relatives? Radio silence. One of the first letters he sent to Mom from prison talked about it. Even my own blood turned on me. You were the only real family I ever had. Mom read it aloud, scoffed, and said, "That's rich, coming from the man who turned on his family first." And she wasn't wrong. He had betrayed everyone who ever stood near him. No. He was reaping it. But it got even better. Because one afternoon I got a message on Facebook from a woman I didn't know. Her name was Carla. She introduced herself as Chris's cousin. "Hi, I'm sorry to bother you. I know you don't know me, but I think we're connected through, well, unfortunately, Chris." I didn't respond at first. But she continued. "I just wanted to say thank you." That got my attention. She explained that their entire family had learned about Chris's final arrest. The one with the illegal firearms, the drunken driving, the stalking. And while none of them were surprised, they were relieved. He dragged our family's name through enough mud. We warned him. We begged him to change. But he wouldn't. Then came the part that really hit me. When he flipped on the family during the trial years ago, it tore everything apart. But we still hoped he'd at least change his life. Do something right. Instead, he just burned everything. She told me they had disowned him. That even his mother, the woman who had defended him through everything, finally stopped writing. Chris was alone. I asked why she was messaging me. And she replied, "Because you survived him. And not just survived, you fought back. We didn't. We just waited for him to ruin things again. But you made sure he couldn't." Then one last message. "We hope your mom's okay now. You all deserved better than him." I read the whole thing twice. then screenshotted and sent it to my siblings. My sister replied with one word: closure. And maybe that's exactly what it was. Not because Carla said something magical, but because his own blood confirmed what we already knew. Chris was never a victim. He wasn't misunderstood. He wasn't pushed to his limits. He wasn't broken. He was selfish. Vicious. Cruel. No. Even the people who once shared his name wanted nothing to do with him. I printed Carla's message and taped it inside my journal, on the same page where I had written years ago, "One day this will all make sense." It did now. It started with an email. I was sipping coffee, going through work notifications, when a subject line popped up that stopped me cold. Guest speaker application, Christopher L. At first it didn't click. Christopher was a common name. But then I opened the document. There was his face. Older. Thinner. But still wearing that same smug expression, like he hadn't aged a day since the last time he gaslit someone into believing he was the victim. He was applying to be a guest speaker at a youth rehabilitation program I consulted for. A program focused on second chances, helping formerly incarcerated individuals rebuild their lives, find jobs, speak to youth about the importance of accountability. His bio read like a tragic novella. Former addict. Wrong crowd. Time served. Now clean. Now humble. Here to give back. I stared at the screen for a long time. No mention of domestic abuse. No mention of harassment. No mention of illegal weapons or threats or child support he was still dodging. Just a redemption story with all the dirt swept neatly under a rug. He even had the audacity to write, "I used to hurt people, but I found peace. Now I want to help others heal too." I could have laughed. Instead, I picked up the phone. The director of the program, Mel, was someone I trusted. I'd worked with her for 2 years. She knew my mother's story in passing but never the details. So when I called and asked to speak privately, she agreed immediately. I told her everything. Not out of spite. Out of duty. I couldn't stand the thought of him standing in front of a room full of vulnerable kids, pretending to be a man he wasn't. Telling them redemption was just about words, not actions. I told her about the cheating, the drinking, the threats, the stalking, the manipulation, the child he ignored, the guns, the lies, the woman he tried to destroy, my mother. Then I sent her screenshots of his old letters, his police record, copies of the court order from the child support case, the restraining history. I ended the email with, "You don't have to believe me, but please don't let him lie to those kids. They deserve better." Mel didn't respond for a full day. Then she called me. Her voice was trembling with anger. "Thank you," she said. "We never would have known. He almost got through." They pulled his application, flagged his name, circulated a quiet internal notice across similar programs in the region. He was done. Not because I screamed, but because I refused to stay silent. A week later, he sent another letter. Not to Mom. To me. Somehow he'd found my address. Inside was one sentence, scribbled with messy, uneven handwriting. "Why won't you just let me live?" I held it for a moment. Then I smiled and whispered to myself, "We did let you live. You just chose to live wrong." And I tossed it in the trash. I didn't need revenge anymore. Just protection. Protection for others who couldn't see through his act yet. I didn't burn his new life down. I just showed people the fire he used to light his old one. Our house is painted yellow now. Not bright, just soft, warm, like a sunrise that doesn't demand your attention, but reminds you everything's okay. There are plants in every corner. A small dog that snores too loud. And on Sunday mornings the kitchen smells like cinnamon and vanilla. It's peaceful. It's home. James, Mom's partner, moved in last fall. He brought more than his clothes. He brought light. He brought calm. And most importantly, he brought respect. He never raised his voice. Never questioned her intelligence. Never rolled his eyes when she spoke. Never made her feel like a burden. He listens. He cares. And you can see it in everything he does. In how he pulls her chair out at dinner. In how he always makes 2 cups of tea, even when she hasn't asked for one. In how he waits for her to fall asleep before turning off the lamp, just in case she wanted to say something else. Mom laughs more now. Her smile isn't forced. Her shoulders don't sag. She doesn't flinch when the doorbell rings. And when she looks in the mirror, she doesn't see regret. She sees a survivor. As for me, I got engaged. Her name's Lila. She's everything I'm not. Colorful, chaotic, endlessly kind. The first time she met my mom, they talked for 2 hours about books and recipes and why Chris was the worst name in existence. I used to think healing looked like forgetting. But now I know better. Healing is remembering without the ache. Without the fear. Without giving the past the power to define you. We still get letters from time to time. Usually around the holidays. Different handwriting. Different tone. Always unsigned. But we know it's him. He tries to sound casual. Like he's moved on. Like he just wants peace. But it's always the same message underneath. Do you still think of me? And our answer, every single time, is simple. No. Not anymore. We don't reply. We don't rage. We just live. Because that's the ultimate revenge, isn't it? Not ruining someone else's life. But refusing to let them ruin yours. And maybe he still tells people we lied. That we ruined his life. That he was a victim of vindictive kids and a cold woman. Let him. Let him rot in that story. Because truth doesn't need an audience. It just needs to stand. When I look at Mom now, I see someone reborn. She decorates the Christmas tree with joy again. She dances in the living room when her favorite song comes on. She fell in love with someone who deserves her. And when she talks about the past, her voice isn't shaking. It's firm. It's clear. She once said to me, I thought I was too old to start over. That I missed my chance to be happy. I looked at her, standing in her yellow kitchen with a man who would never raise his hand or his voice. And I said, you didn't start over. You just finally started living. Came on a Monday. No return address. No stamp. Just a plain envelope, tucked awkwardly into the mailbox like it didn't want to be found. I almost didn't bring it inside. Almost left it there to be swept away with the flyers and junk. But something made me open it. Maybe curiosity. Maybe closure. Maybe a small piece of me, the last one still holding the match, waiting to burn what was left. It was from him. Of course it was. But it was different this time. The handwriting was shaky. The ink smudged in places. It wasn't long, barely a page. No, how are you? No, please take me back. No lam. No rage. Just one sentence repeated 3 times in different ways. I'm sorry, Kropka. I didn't know how broken I was. I hope you're happy. No signature. Just space. And silence. I stared at it for a long time. Then I walked into the living room where Mom was sitting with her glasses halfway down her nose, reading a gardening magazine she never actually plants anything from. I handed her the letter. She read it once. Folded it back up. And without saying a word, she reached over to the side table, opened the drawer and dropped it in, next to all the others. Then she looked at me and said, I don't hate him. But I also don't owe him anything. That night I wrote a letter of my own. Not to send. Not for him. For me. Dear Chris, you were a storm. You came into our lives with noise and fury, and for a while we believed you were rain. Something refreshing, something new. But you were thunder without meaning. Chaos without purpose. And we let you in. We watched you spin and break and twist everything into a version of you. You hurt the best woman I've ever known. And for a time you made us smaller than we were meant to be. But that time is over now. We have light. We have peace. We have each other. And you have your choices. Whatever pain you carry now, it's yours. And whatever freedom we carry now, it's ours. Don't write again. You've already been written out. I burned it in the sink. Watched the edges curl. Watched the smoke rise. Watched the last of it turn to ash. We don't speak of him anymore. Not because we're afraid. Because we don't have to. We moved on. We healed. We rebuilt from nothing and made everything. Chris is a name we used to know. A face we used to fear. No. He's just a footnote. A warning. A reminder that love doesn't mean surrender. That forgiveness doesn't mean return. And that some bridges are meant to burn and never be rebuilt. This is the end of the story. Not his. Ours. And we wrote it ourselves. In our own ink. With our own hands. And this time, no one else holds the pen.